Our next focus is going to be on caustics, and caustics allows us to create some really nice dynamic effects with the lighting as it goes through the different types of objects. It could be going through, for instance, a glass jar, water, a honey jar, anything that's going to take the light in and then scatter that light out on another side. So what we want to be able to do is recreate that same type of effect, and inside of Max we've got a basic scene set up. We've got a plane in the scene just to capture our shadow and set up our rendering area. We have a vase in here that has a transparent glass shader to it, and then a couple of sticks inside of there to decorate it up. Now what we want to do is start off by just placing in a default light into our scene just to light the scene up for us. We're going to go ahead and drop one in. We'll make it an MR area Omni. We'll drop this guy in. Let's go ahead and set up some parameters for it. For our decay type, let's go ahead and drop this to our inverse square. Everything goes a little bit dark. We're probably going to need to take our multiplier up quite a bit, so we'll go to about 15. Let's go ahead and go to our area light parameters, and we're going to have this on, and we're also going to show the icon in the renderer. And let's take a quick render of this and see how we're looking. Okay, not too bad. Our little sphere is just a little bit big. Let's go ahead and take this guy down just a little bit. We're going to make this a nice little spot. And besides the sphere right there, everything else is looking good. We've got some nice smooth shadows, good clean lighting with this. One thing that we want to start looking at though is right now our scene is really, really dark. So let's go ahead and do some gamma correction on this. So we're going to go up to our preference settings. In preference settings, we have the option for our gamma and loot. So we're going to go into our gamma. We're going to enable our gamma. We're going to make sure that our gamma setting is at 2.2. We're not going to worry about the bitmap files because we're not actually having any type of images in here, so we don't have to make any corrections to a texture image. If we were having an image, then we would want to increase that input gamma to about a 2.2. We'll go ahead and OK on this. There we go. Our render looks a whole lot better. We can actually see everything in there. Let's go ahead and re-render it, get that smaller sphere in there. Very nice. Now when we set up for caustics, we're not going to want to use the same light that we're setting up for actually lighting the environment. We want a separate light that's going to be used for generating the caustics on our object. So we're going to be creating a second light, and then we're going to be setting up those parameters for the caustics. So let's go ahead and drop in a free spotlight into the scene. We'll go back to our Create tab, and let's just grab up a free spot. And we'll drop that in on our top view. There we go. Let's just lift this guy up a little bit. Rotate him into position. We're just going to have a nice little angle to cast those caustics on. And inside the viewport here, I'm just going to turn on my lighting settings so I get a little bit better read on what's going to happen with it. Okay, with the light set up, we're looking at setting it just a nice little angle, similar to our other light. We're going to just angle this over just a little. This should give us a pretty good cast all the way across. We might even rotate this guy just a little bit more. Let's rotate him down just a little so we can keep those concentrated in that area. There we go. We can even pull in the length on that. There we go. Okay, so we've got light in the scene. Now if we re-render this scene, what we're going to notice is that we've got the multiplier turned on, so we've got some intensity, some energy from that light coming out. And we don't really want to light the scene with this. What we want to do is light the scene with the other light. The other light gave us a really nice effect. That's what we want. We want this light simply to generate our caustics for us, to throw out the caustic photons and give us that nice effect. So what we want to do is we want to basically turn the multiplier off. We don't want to turn the light off. We just want to turn the multiplier down to 0, which basically disables the light. But it still is going to allow us to throw out those caustic photons from it. The other thing you may want to take a peek at is that inside your render window, if you are rendering this and re-rendering this, which we will be doing with the caustics, you may want to go ahead and turn down a couple of settings. We've got the final gather precision. We've got that disabled right now just to speed up the rendering. We've also got our image precision. We can bump this guy down a little, and our soft shadows, we can knock that down if we want. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my reuse for my geometry. Cache that and lock that down. Okay, let's go ahead and take another render. There we go, just what we want. We've got the light in the scene. It's not throwing out any light to the environment. We've got lit by our other light, our Omni light up here. So we're doing real good. Next thing we want to do is actually take this light and we're going to make some adjustments in our mental ray indirect illumination rollout. Instead of the automatically calculate energy and photons, we're going to go ahead and uncheck that. We're going to do our manual settings. We're going to turn this one on. We're going to re-render that. Now, when we turn this on and when we see it, one thing that's not going to happen, we're not automatically going to get caustics with it. We actually have to make some adjustments on the properties to turn that on. And that's what we're going to do next. So to change some of the properties that we want to work with, we need to go to our render setup window. And in our render setup window, we're going to go to our indirect illumination tab. And in here, what we need to do in our caustics and global illumination rollout, we need to turn on the caustics. So we're going to enable this, and that's going to turn it on for us. Right now, we're not going to mess with any of these settings. We simply want to turn it on, take a render, see how it works for us. So we've got it enabled. We'll go back to our window. Let's go ahead and just render this out. And the first thing we may get, we're going to get there are no caustic generators in the scene. For caustics to actually work, we have to tell Max what objects are going to have caustics on them. So we'll say OK to that. We'll go ahead and render it out. We can see that there's no caustics being applied to it. So we need to actually go to the objects that we want to have caustics applied to them. We can right click on it. We're going to go to the object properties. So we're going to go into our object properties, and inside of our object properties, in our mental ray tab, we have options to actually turn on and generate the caustics. So in the caustics and global illumination, remember before we actually had the generate global illumination and the receive global illumination. Well, in here, by default, all the objects are allowed to receive caustics, but not all the objects are allowed by default to generate the caustics. So if we want this object to generate caustics, we simply click on the generate caustics. We can click OK on that one. And let's re-render that scene. Doing our photon emission for the caustics, and we're going to get a nice interesting little scene. Definitely not the most beautiful caustics you've ever seen, but we know that it's actually working, and that's a good thing. Now what we do have is a really intense set of caustics, so we're actually getting more than just one light giving us caustic information. We've got the one light here that we set up, but then we also have our Omni light over here, and the Omni light is going to have its options turned on. So we're going to go to our mental ray indirect illumination, and inside of here it's automatically calculating the energy and photons for the caustic photons. So let's go ahead and just turn the automatic mode off, and we're not going to turn on the manual settings. We're going to leave both of these off so that that light's not throwing out any kind of caustic photons. So let's go and re-render that scene one more time. What we should get by the end of it, we should get a set of photons that are less dense than before, and we do get that, and that's a good thing. Which means now we can focus in on the single light that we want casting the caustic photons and get that one set up just right so that we can start making this look pretty. So the properties we want to look at in here on the manual settings are going to be with the energy. The first thing we notice in here is that we've got some really bright intensity in this light and in the caustics right here. So let's take the energy down. let's make this not quite so intense. So let's go from the 5,000 that we've got, the 50,000 that we've got here. Let's take this down to something even smaller, somewhere between 300 to maybe even 250. So with a lower energy, the next thing we want to look at is with our decay. With the decay type, if you remember, the 2.0 is the inverse square, so we can leave it at that. It gives us that realistic fall off that we want. And then we get down to our caustic photons. Now, right now we're set at 10,000 caustic photons. Now, with the caustic photons, we don't need the same amount that we would with our GI photons when we were rendering out our global illumination. With that one, we were looking at millions and millions of photons. With the caustic photons, we can actually get away with just a few 100,000 photons to give us a really nice, clean image. So, with the caustic photons, let's take this, instead of 10,000, let's take this up to 100,000. Let's go ahead and do a re-render on this one. And before we do, let's go ahead and change our light. We're going to take a little more of a color. So when this light goes through here, we're going to have it create maybe more of a teal sort of color look on the other side. There we go. We'll re-render this one. And as it re-renders, we should get a nice little effect and some neat little rings around it, assuming we actually picked the right view. So let's go ahead and go back in. Let's lock down that perspective view. I'm going to go ahead and tighten in on this shot too, just so that we can get a good clean view of that. Alright, very nice. We can see some nice little ring shapes. We can see that caustic effect going around there. And it's looking really good, especially compared to what we had before. We're doing really nice there. We're still getting some little artifacting here, some little spots out and around that we want to be able to clean some of that up. And we'll take a look at that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and just change our view up one more time. Let's pull our light down a little. Let's just rotate this guy out. Let's re-render that one.